Our happy marriage fell apart right in front of my eyes. When I got home that night as my wife served dinner, I held her hands and said, "I have something to tell you." She sat down and ate quietly. Again I observed the hurt in her eyes. But I had to let her know what I was thinking. I want a divorce. I raised the topic calmly. She didn't seem to be annoyed by my words. Instead she asked me softly, "Why?" I avoid her question. This made her very angry. She shouted at me, "You are not a man." That night, we didn't talk to each other. She was weeping so deeply. I knew she wanted to know what has happened to our marriage, but I could hardly give her a satisfactory answer. I was deeply in love with my new girlfriend Lisa. I didn't love her anymore. With a deep sense of guilt, I drafted a divorce agreement which stated she could own our house, car and 40% of stake of the company. She glanced at it and tore it into pieces. The woman who had spent 12 years of her life with me had become a stranger. I felt sorry for her wasted years and time, but I couldn't take back what I said, for I love Lisa so deeply. Finally she cried loudly in front of me, which was what I had expected to see. To me her cry was actually a kind of release. The ideal of divorce which had obsessed me for several weeks seemed to be firmer and clearer now. The next day, I came back home very late because I had a lot of amazing time with my new lover Lisa. I met her writing something at the table. I didn't have supper but went straight to my room and fell asleep because I was very tired from after an eventful day with Lisa. When I woke up she was still there at the table writing. I just didn't care, so I turned over and was asleep again. In the morning she presented her divorce condition. She didn't want anything from me but needed a month notice before the divorce. She requested that in that 1 month we both try to live as normal a life as possible. Her reason for this conditions were simple. Our son had his exams in a month's time and she didn't want to disrupt him with our broken marriage. This was agreeable to me, but she had something more. She asked me to recall how I had carried her into our bridal room on our wedding day. She requested that every day from the month's duration I carry her out of our bedroom to the front door every morning. I thought she was going crazy. Just to make our last day together bearable, I accepted the odd request. I told Lisa about my wife divorce conditions. She laughed loudly and thought it was absurd. No matter what trick she applied, she has to face the divorce, she said scornfully. My wife and I had not had any body contact since my divorce intention was explicitly expressed. Oh, when I carried her out on the first day, we both appeared clumsy. Our son clapped behind us. Daddy is holding mommy in his arms. His words brought me a sense of pain. From the bedroom to the sitting room, then to the door, I walked over 10 meters with her in my arms. She closed her eyes and said softly, "Don't tell our son about the divorce." I nodded. I put her down outside the door. She went to wait for the bus to work. I drove alone to the office. On the second day, both of us acted more easily. She leaned on my chest. I could smell the fragrance of her blouse. I realized I hadn't looked at this woman carefully for a long time. I realized she was not young anymore. There was a fine wrinkles on her face. Her hair was graying. Our marriage had taken its toll on her face. On the 4th and 5th day, when I lifted her up, I felt a sense of intimacy returning. I didn't tell Lisa anything about this point. One faithful morning she was choosing what to wear. She tried on quite a few dresses but couldn't find suitable one. Then I suddenly realized that she had grown too thin. That was the reason why I could carry her more easily. I felt really bad about her condition. I discovered she has buried so much pain and bitterness in her heart. Our son came in at that moment and said, "Dad, it's time to carry mom out." To him, seeing his father carrying his mother out has been an essential part of his life. My wife gestured on our son to come closer and hugged him tightly. I turned my face away because I was afraid I might change my mind at the last minute. Then I held her hands, walking from the bedroom through the sitting room. Her hands surrounded my neck softly, and naturally I held her body tightly. It was just like our wedding day. But our much lighter weight made me sad. When I held her in my arms, I could hardly move. Our son had gone to school. I held her and said I hadn't noticed that our life lacked intimacy. I drove to office and jumped out of the car swiftly without locking the door. I was afraid delay could make me change my mind. I walked upstairs. Lisa opened the door and I said to her, "Sorry, I do not want to divorce my wife anymore." She looked at me astonished and then touched my forehead. "Do you have fever?" she said. I moved her hand off my head. "Sorry, Lisa, I want divorce. My marriage life was boring, probably because she and I didn't value the details of our life. Not because we didn't love each other's anymore. Now I realize that since I carried her into my home on our wedding day, I supposed to hold her until death do us apart." Lisa seemed to be suddenly awake. She thought it was a joke and was dreaming. She gave me a loud slap and then slammed the door and burst into tears. I walked downstairs and drove away. At the floral store on the way, I ordered a bouquet of flowers for my wife. The salesgirl asked me to write on the card. I smiled and wrote, "I will carry you out every morning to have an amazing time with our son until death do us apart." That evening I arrived home, flowers in my hands, smile on my face. I ran upstairs, only to find my wife on the bed dead. My wife had been fighting cancer for months and I was busy spending time with Lisa to even notice. She knew that she would die soon and she wanted to save me from the whatever negative reaction from our son in case we pushed through with the divorce. At least in the eyes of our son, I am a caring and loving husband. Moral: the small details of your life are really what matters in a relationship. It's not the mansion, cars, property, or the money in the bank. These create an environment conducive for happiness but cannot give happiness in themselves. So find to be your spouse friend and do those little things for each other that build intimacy and have a real happy marriage and live as one happy family together.